Throughout RuneScape's history, there's always been a core group of underground markets. Things like botting and real-world trading have always been there, but there's a new one on the rise. It's already affecting the game negatively, but I believe it could do significantly more damage to group Ironman mode. Let's find out why. This story begins a few weeks ago when a software developer reached out to me through Discord. He told me that he had created something called a modern smart multi-boxing client, and my first thought was, what does that even mean? First of all, let me clarify the difference between multi-logging and multi-boxing. Multi-logging is simply when you play on multiple accounts at the same time. For example, pretty much every time I play RuneScape, I play on my main account while also playing on one or two alternate accounts. It's a lot of clicking, but once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy and makes some decent gold. It's actually really common these days and happens in a lot of MMOs. Now, as with most things, some people will take it to the extreme, such as this guy who plays on 36 accounts at the same time, all fighting Vyers. I get a headache just thinking about how many computer mice he's probably destroyed by now. Even if it sounds ridiculous, all of this is within game rules. Jagex allows you to play on as many accounts as you want with pretty minimal restrictions. However, the client I'm about to discuss does break the rules. This is not meant to be a promotion of this software at all. This is simply for entertainment purposes. As you know, if you break RuneScape's rules, you will get banned. It's that simple. Don't do it. This developer's multi-boxing client absolutely blew my mind. So with multi-logging, you have to click on every client every time you want to do something. Like if I want to open my inventory on 3 accounts, I have to click 3 separate times. But with multi-boxing, you have one master account where the user does all the clicking and every other client copies it. The developer sent me a video of 6 accounts completing Tutorial Island at the exact same time, and I was just absolutely hooked. The rabbit hole of what people can do with this client is really deep, and I think you might be a little shocked by how hard the software can be abused. Before we get to that, did you know somebody is watching you on YouTube? No, not your neighbor in the window behind you. Hey man. It's actually your internet service provider. They can not only spy on everything you do, but they're even allowed to sell your browsing data to advertising agencies. That's why I use ExpressVPN, the sponsor of today's video, because I want to protect my data. They're fast, cheap, and really easy to use. You just open up ExpressVPN, press the big button, and get connected. Just like that, all your browsing data is encrypted and rerouted through their secure servers. Your IP is masked, and best of all, you're hidden from your ISP. Not to mention, ExpressVPN even has a no logs policy, meaning they don't keep track of what you do either. ExpressVPN is always on the cutting edge, and their trusted server technology really raised VPN standards. Don't just want to take my word for it, they actually had their privacy policy audited by PwC, one of the big 4 accounting firms. If this all sounds good to you, my viewers can get 3 months of ExpressVPN for free by visiting expressvpn.com/Colonello or clicking the link in the description below. Now back on topic. This client has actually been around for a few years. In fact, Sir Pugger talked about it briefly a little over a year ago, but there's been a lot of advancement since then. Multi-boxing hasn't truly become a problem until recently. At the very beginning, it was difficult to do anything that wasn't bank standing, and activities that required using the camera were basically impossible. For example, a multi-boxer could fletch all day, no issues, but when trying to do activities like, let's say, agility, that's where problems would pop up. For example, one client lagging and causing an account to disconnect, or RuneScape's anti-cheat feature that causes the camera angle to change slightly over time. These days, the client includes features that are meant to keep characters in sync at all times. This clip absolutely shocked me. All of the accounts are on a different tile, and with one click, they all sync up to attack the same guard. Now, that is really impressive, but what actually is the use of a client like this? Why would a rule breaker use this client over just running a completely automated bot farm? For casual users, it seems to be doing things like training on a few accounts at the same time, or just messing around at the Grand Exchange. My favorite clip the developer sent me has to be this guy, who's on a tournament world and has created a vengeance stack. Anyone who tries to attack this pile of accounts pretty much instantly gets one hit. But as you could guess, that's not necessarily what most people who use this client actually do. In a lot of cases, it's used for, well, you probably guessed it already, gold farming. For most users, it's small. They stick to the default 15 account limit on the base software. Funnily enough, most of the activities they do are the same things you see bots do. Blast furnace, power leveling, pretty much any sort of thing that can earn a lot of money or a lot of XP. What really separates this from botting software is the activities that bots traditionally can't do. For example, being able to complete bosses together as a group. It's really rare that you see bots in places like God Wars, because soloing one of those bosses is fairly difficult, and creating a script to have multiple bots work together is likely even more difficult. Even if a bot can solo it, they're pretty unlikely to see a profit for a long time simply because of what these bosses drop and all the supplies they'd use. But anyone who's ever gone to God Wars and more than a group of, let's say, 5 players knows how easy it is. With the proper gear, someone could stay at God Wars for hours without ever having to leave. So in theory, a gold farmer with this client could do the same. The developer told me that the highest amount of GP somebody has ever made using this software is likely at the Corporeal Beast. Again, a difficult and tedious boss to solo, but incredibly easy in a group. But still, we haven't even scratched the surface of what power users of this client are doing. The software comes with a few different tiers, and at the highest tier, gold farmers can play it up to 250 accounts at the same time. Tiers like that are for serious gold farmers who make their livings off of RuneScape, or just some insane person who happens to have 30 monitors. A lot of the software's big clients are people who make accounts for other players. Think about Pking accounts. Although there's some very unique builds in Pking, there's always a few normal builds in consistent demand. A gold farmer could make 50 accounts and do all the quests, leveling, and so on that the account needs in really just a fraction of the time. Now, there's one big flaw with this software I haven't mentioned yet. It is incredibly easy to get caught. Think about it. Is a gold farmer really going to roll through the center of the GE with 15 perfectly in sync accounts and expect not to get reported? No. There's people who will report you for not typing back to them because they think you're a bot. Of course somebody is going to report the 15 accounts. Funnily enough, even in some of the clips I was sent, you can see players typing that they're reporting the accounts. So, as you'd guess, most of the script users seem to be in places where it's harder to get caught. Places that are completely empty or filled to the brim with players. For example, one user trained all their account's combat levels by playing pest control on a private world. Or like I showed earlier, the account's flinching the chaos elemental in the wilderness. It's one of the least popular bosses in the game. As for the safety and numbers approach, these accounts can almost perfectly blend in at places like Blast Furnace. During peak hours, you can't right-click anywhere without your screen filling up with names, so it'd be difficult to spot the multi-boxed accounts. Now, of course, they could just log the accounts into separate worlds, but most activities only have specific worlds where they're done, and they wouldn't be able to do any form of group content. Now, there's a few people who use this software that don't care if they get caught. In fact, they use this software in the most public way possible, PKing. The developer told me that a few large PKing clans have used this software. I mean, think about it. If you're in a big clan war in the wilderness, a few multi-boxed accounts could blend right in but give a huge advantage. Like these clips of the software being used in the old Revenant caves. Look how ridiculously broken this is. They rushed someone with at least 9 Gmaul specs at the same time. The Revenant caves were already impossible to stay alive in, and this just makes it 9 times worse. This isn't the only place that client users PK either. Another popular area seems to be the Chaos Altar. I used this altar to get 99 prayer, and there was nothing scarier than seeing an entire team log in on you. As a low level though, you're generally pretty safe here. That is, unless a multi-boxer logs in on you with Fire Strike. Despite barely having a magic level over 10, you'll see these accounts do some serious damage pretty fast. The multi-boxer then even taunted whoever they PK'd through chat. I would not be surprised if these accounts were banned an hour later because of this. Actually, I can check. Yep, all those accounts are unsurprisingly banned. Now it's time for what you've probably been waiting for. How is this client going to potentially ruin Group Ironman for people? Although Group Ironman was announced over 2 years ago, we didn't know much about it until last week. Basically, players can form a group of 2 to 5 people and take on the world of RuneScape as Ironman. It's like normal Ironman, so no grand exchange or trading with those outside the group. Currently, in underground markets, normal Ironman accounts are bought and sold all the time. Sometimes people want to take a shortcut and buy an account that lets them skip grinds they hate. There's starter accounts for grinds like 99 firemaking or 99 thieving. Who's to say that the exact same thing won't happen with Group Ironman? You may be thinking, who is going to be able to convince their friends to buy a pre-trained group? In most cases, hopefully nobody. However, because of the way Group Ironman is planned to work, I think somebody could give their group a huge head start while also only buying one account. Let me explain. So let's say there's a group of 3 regular players, not multi-boxers, and one player wants to leave. That's okay, they leave, take their items with them, and their account is converted into a normal account. Now, the group only has 2 members. If the group wanted, they could invite a new player to the group, but it has to be a fresh level 3. The other 2 players still have all their items, skills, and quests completed, so this fresh level 3 can progress much faster using their resources. Now, let's think about this in terms of multiboxing. Let's say a multiboxer starts a group, trains for a few hours, and then camps at Lizardman Shamans for a while. A few days later, the Multiboxer receives a Dragon Warhammer on one of the accounts. He can then kick every group member except for the one that got the Warhammer and then sell that account. Someone buys that account and then recruits all their level 3 friends. Instantly, that group has a massive advantage that saves them potentially hundreds of hours. Let's try a different scenario. Group Ironman is going to have some form of high scores. Someone wants to be rank 1 at Bandos, so they make a new group, train it up, and then multi-box with it at Bandos, and a few days later have rank 1. Getting rank 1 in a normal group would probably be pretty difficult, especially because every group member likely has different goals. As a result, multi-boxing could completely ruin the integrity of the high scores. Group Ironman is still a few months away, so Jagex does have some time to hopefully come up with solutions for these problems. Like I said earlier, multi-boxing is still a very new and niche technology, at least when it comes to RuneScape. If not properly dealt with, I could see this becoming a much bigger problem. So I'm interested to see how Jagex will respond to it. They've already banned a ton of multi-boxers, and I hope that trend will continue. Before I go, I want to let everyone know I actually opened a second YouTube channel. In my first video, which is up right now, I talk about how the world's most popular mobile game basically ruined its developer's life. So if that sounds interesting, check out that video on screen right now.